The first mistake Roderick Greymane ever made, according to his own internal and heavily fortified accounting, was saying yes to a baby fox with a broken leg. It seemed a minor error in judgment at the time, a concession to the enormous, pleading eyes of the woman his wolf had unilaterally declared their mate. The woman, Kit Tallgrass, had been standing in the doorway of his office at the Greymane Pack compound, mud on her boots, rain in her hair, holding a trembling ball of orange fur like it was the last surviving artifact of a dying civilization. His wolf had assessed the situation with his usual clinical detachment and delivered a single, uncharacteristic directive. "She is sad. Fix it. Everything else is secondary." This was remarkable because his wolf, a dead-serious, hyper-vigilant entity who experienced every moment of every day as a potential tactical crisis, had never once, in 29 years, classified anything as secondary. Not border patrols, not rival pack movements, not the precise threat level of the barista at the coffee shop on Main Street who smiled at Kit every Tuesday. Current status, watch list. One more smile and he moves to incident. So Roderick, alpha of the Greymane Pack, a man whose resting expression could curdle milk at 40 paces, had nodded. One fox. What was one fox? It was a tactical error of catastrophic proportions. 3 months later, the Greymane compound had been peacefully, cheerfully invaded. The single fox had become a recruitment officer for the broken, the bewildered, and the bizarre. The property now included 2 foxes, the original, Patches, and his suspiciously acquired friend, Finnegan, a one-eyed owl named Professor Hoot, a badger with what Kit diagnosed as performance anxiety, a young deer that had imprinted on Marcus's German Shepherd and now attempted to play fetch, and Gerald. Gerald was a goose. Gerald had looked into the void, and the void had offered him a lifetime subscription to violence. He had accepted with enthusiasm. Gerald now terrorized Roderick's most senior pack members, hissing with the righteous fury of a fallen god if anyone walked too quickly past the back garden. No one could do anything about it. Kit had named him. Once Kit named something, it fell under a divine protection that even an alpha's authority could not penetrate. His wolf was in a state of perpetual conflict regarding the menagerie. The fox is sleeping on our territory. This is either an ally or an infiltrator. I have been observing for 11 weeks. Results? Inconclusive. The owl is a surveillance asset. Respect the owl. The goose is an agent of chaos, and I will not acknowledge its existence. Roderick had suggested, internally, that perhaps the goose was just a goose. Incorrect. The goose has intentions. I have seen its eyes. It is planning something. The only exception to his wolf's rigid non-engagement policy was Patches, the original fox. Late at night, when the compound was quiet and Kit was asleep with her head on his chest, Roderick would sometimes lose control of his own hand. It would find its way to the fox curled at the foot of their bed and groom its fur with meticulous, secret tenderness. His wolf would then file a report on the unauthorized affection, as if it had been perpetrated by a foreign agent. Contact was made with the small orange asset at 2:47. Duration, 9 minutes. This was not sanctioned. Recommend immediate review of personal security protocols. Also, the fox was very soft. This is noted for the record. Roderick drew the line, the final immutable boundary of his patience, when Kit walked into the kitchen on a Saturday morning, cradling a bear cub. The entire pack was there. Marcus Vance, his beta, was making eggs. Nora Greymane, his late father's sister, and the compound's self-appointed moral authority, was reading the newspaper with the grim focus of a woman cataloging the world's failures. 2 of his enforcers were arguing about football. Kit walked in like she was carrying groceries. "No," Roderick said. The word echoed off the kitchen tiles with all the authority he could muster. Marcus made a sound like a strangled cough and very carefully did not turn from the stove. "His name is Barnaby," Kit announced, beaming as if she'd just presented him with an updated trade agreement. "His mother was hit on Route 9. He was alone in the ditch." "Kit." Roderick set down his coffee with the deliberate care of a man defusing a bomb. "That is a bear." "He is a baby," she countered, as if this were a point of theological debate. Her wolf, a creature Kit called Shepherd, was doing what Shepherd always did, providing a running internal monologue of anxious goodwill at a pace that would give an auctioneer a headache. He's scared, Kit. His heart is going so fast. Tell the big one to stop frowning, it's not helping. Also, the fox is jealous. Patches has been staring at the cub for 40 seconds, and his tail is doing the angry thing. Tell Patches he's still our favorite. No, wait, don't tell him that. The owl will hear, and the owl holds grudges. Just, everyone needs to calm down, including us, especially us. But underneath Shepard's frantic care for the cub, there was something else, something quieter and distinctly wounded. She held the bear very close. She has never held us that close. We are right here. Roderick's wolf assessed the situation. Subject is ursine, juvenile. Current threat level, negligible. Projected threat level in 18 months, significant. She is looking at us. She is doing the eye thing, the one where they get large and slightly wet. This is an attack. We are under attack. Recommend immediate capitulation. Roderick looked at Kit's face, alight with fierce, protective love. He looked at the bear cub, which yawned, revealing a ridiculously pink, toothless mouth. He sighed, the sound of a man surrendering a strategically critical position. It stays in the barn, he said. He, Kit corrected, already halfway out the door. His name is Barnaby, and he likes to be sung to. Nora lowered her newspaper. Your father, she said, her voice carrying the particular weight of a woman who had been saying your father for 15 years, would not have allowed a bear on the property. Roderick poured more coffee. My father also thought the internet was a fad, Nora. Marcus, still facing the stove, shook with silent laughter. The pack meeting that evening was a masterclass in collective denial. The Greymane pack met monthly in the main house's big living room, a sprawling, slightly battered space that smelled like pine, old leather, and too many wolves in one room. Roderick sat in his usual chair by the fireplace, which was not a throne, though Nora had once suggested they get him one, for the dignity of the position. He had declined. Underneath his chair, Barnaby the bear cub was asleep on his foot. The cub had escaped the barn in under 2 hours. Kit had said this proved he was gifted. Roderick's wolf had noted it as a security breach and updated the threat assessment accordingly. The bear has breached containment. I am unsurprised. I tried to warn us. The meeting was supposed to be about the northern property line. The Callahan pack, their territorial neighbors to the north, had been pushing boundaries for months, running patrols closer and closer to the creek that marked the border, leaving scent marks in places that were, diplomatically speaking, rude. But Nora had her own agenda. The real issue, she said, adjusting her reading glasses with the precision of a woman loading a weapon, is discipline, structure. Your father ran this pack with clear expectations, regular patrols, formal hierarchy, none of this. She gestured vaguely at the room, which currently contained 2 foxes, an owl on the bookshelf, and Gerald the goose sitting on the ottoman like a tiny, furious king. Situation. The situation has a name, Kit said from the back of the room. She was holding a squirrel. The squirrel had a twig splint bound to one of its tiny legs with a piece of thread. Shepard was immediately, frantically torn. Oh no, the squirrel is scared of the room. Too many predators. Tell them to stop looking so wolfy. Also, she picked up the squirrel. She picked it up and she held it against her chest. She has never held us against her chest like that. She carries us in her head, which is fine, but the squirrel gets the physical contact. The squirrel has known her for 20 minutes. Nora stared at Kit, then at the squirrel, then at Roderick with an expression that said, "Do you see what I mean?" Roderick saw Kit. That was the problem. He always saw Kit. She was standing there in an old flannel shirt, her dark hair escaping its braid, cradling a rodent with the focused tenderness of a surgeon, and he wanted to cross the room and bury his face in her neck and never attend another pack meeting as long as he lived. His wolf, who had been maintaining a professional focus on Nora's territorial concerns, abruptly short-circuited. She tucked her hair behind her ear. This is new intelligence. File it. She's wearing our flannel. She's in our clothes. Every male in this room needs to see that and understand what it means. Updating the scoreboard. Marcus. No threat, as always. The enforcer by the window. Low priority, but he looked at her for 1.3 seconds when she walked in. That is 0.8 seconds too long. He is now monitored. The squirrel. What gender is the squirrel? This matters. Perhaps, Kit said, her voice louder than she intended. The room turned to stare at her. Roderick's eyes met hers. Nora raised a single disdainful eyebrow. Shepard panicked. Oops. We've spoken. Now we have to say something useful. Something about animals. Animals are useful. Perhaps, Kit repeated, forcing a confident tone, if the Callahan border is the problem, we should be running out there more, not less. A pack that uses its territory holds its territory. Right now we run the southern loop every week, but the northern border maybe once a month. If we ran it weekly, the Callahans would get the message. Silence. One of the enforcers scratched his jaw. Nora looked at Kit as if she'd suggested they resolve the territorial dispute via interpretive dance. My dear, Nora said, her tone the particular flavor of condescension that older pack women had perfected into an art form. Pack security is a bit more complex than scheduling nature walks. Humiliation burned hot in Kit's cheeks. She wanted to shrink. She was out of her depth, a vet tech who'd wandered into the grown-ups table. Shepard crumbled instantly. She's right. We're stupid. We should have stayed quiet. Now the Alpha is embarrassed of us. We should go check on Barnaby. Barnaby never judges us. Barnaby just wants to be sung to. But Roderick wasn't embarrassed. He was looking at Kit with a strange, thoughtful expression. She's right, he said. We've been ceding ground by not being present. Weekly northern runs, starting this Saturday. Full pack. Nora's mouth thinned. Kit felt a flicker of warmth. Validation from the one person whose opinion she couldn't pretend not to care about. For a moment, she felt like she might actually belong here. Then Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his face changed. Rod, it's Jim Fendrell, out at the Elkridge farm. Says his livestock are dropping. Healthy 1 minute, dead the next. 3 farms now. The warmth in Kit's chest vanished. The Saturday pack run was the first time Kit had run with the full Greymane pack since she'd arrived. They gathered at the tree line behind the compound just before dawn. 18 wolves, shifting in the gray half-light. The air was cool and smelled like wet earth and pine needles. Roderick shifted first, the change taking him in one fluid motion, bones reshaping, skin giving way to thick silver-gray fur. He shook out his coat and stood waiting, enormous and still, while the pack assembled around him. Kit shifted beside him. It was always a relief, the change. Like taking off a pair of shoes that were a half size too small and feeling the ground properly for the first time. Her wolf form was smaller than most of the pack, brown and quick, built for agility rather than power. Shepard immediately began her own version of a pre-flight checklist. Okay, paws, good. Nose, working. Tail, present. The Alpha is right there. He's so big. We knew he was big, but he's really big. Don't stare. We're staring. Stop it. Oh, Patches shifted too. Look at him, Wait, he's standing closer to the Alpha than we are. That is our spot. Move, fox. Patches, who had not shifted because he was actually just a fox, blinked at her. The run itself was glorious. 18 wolves streaming through the forest in the early light, paws silent on the pine needle floor, breath coming in white plumes. Roderick led, Kit just behind his right flank. Marcus ran left. The enforcers fanned out in a loose perimeter. For the first 10 minutes, Roderick's wolf was perfectly focused, disciplined, professional. Then Kit nipped his ear as she passed him on a downhill stretch, a playful, spontaneous gesture that meant nothing and everything. His wolf handled it like a champion. For exactly 4 minutes. Then, mid-stride, while navigating a stream crossing that required actual concentration, she bit our ear. She put her teeth on us. Voluntarily. Not in combat. Recreationally. I need a moment. I am a predator. I am feared across 3 counties. She nipped our ear and I am experiencing a system malfunction. How do I file a report on myself? Roderick stumbled slightly on a rock. Marcus glanced over with a question in his eyes. Roderick ignored him and ran harder. They hit the northern border 40 minutes in, and that's when everything changed. Kit smelled it first. A wrongness in the water. The creek that marked the Callahan border should have smelled like stone, cold water, and the faint green of algae. Instead, it carried something metallic and bitter, like burnt pennies. Her wolf went from anxious chatterbox to razor sharp in an instant. Stop. The water is wrong. Taste it. No, don't taste it. Smell it. Bitter. Chemical. That's not natural. The fish. There are no fish. There should be minnows in the shallows, and there are none. Something is killing this creek. Kit stopped at the water's edge, hackles rising. Roderick circled back to her, his wolf immediately cataloging her change in posture. Mate is alert. Threat assessment, unknown. She's focused on the water. Trusting her read. She knows things we don't about things that aren't wolves. This is documented. Kit whined, low and urgent, and pawed at the ground near the creek bank. The earth here was wrong too. A faint oily sheen on the rocks, vegetation along the banks yellowed and dying where it should have been green. Roderick huffed, a command to the pack. They gathered. He shifted back first, crouching naked at the water's edge, not caring about the cold. Kit shifted a beat later, wrapping her arms around herself. Something's in the water, she said, her voice firm. Upstream. You can smell it, right? He could. Now that she'd pointed it out, the chemical tang was obvious under the natural scent of the creek. He'd been so focused on Callahan's scent markers that he'd filtered it out as background noise. This is why the livestock are dying, Kit said. This creek feeds into the Elkridge pastures, and Stone Hollow, and the Oakley farm. They all draw from this watershed. Marcus, shifted back and pulling on the shorts he'd tied around his ankle, looked grim. The Callahans run right up to this creek. Their side, but still. It's not just near their side, Kit said, kneeling to examine a rock. The underside was coated in a dark, oily residue. It's coming from their side. Back at the compound, the argument started before Roderick had finished his coffee. Nora was in the kitchen, along with Jim Fendrell, the old wolf who managed the Elkridge livestock operation, and 2 of the pack's elders, Tom and George, who had known Roderick's father and made sure everyone remembered it. 6 more cattle this morning, Fendrell said, his weathered face drawn. Just drop. Healthy 1 minute, gone the next. I've never seen anything like it. It's the water, Kit said from the doorway. She had Barnaby on her hip. The bear cub was gnawing contentedly on a wooden spoon. The creek's been poisoned, something chemical coming from upstream. Callahan territory. Tom, a barrel-chested man in his 60s who still called Kit the girl, despite having been corrected 11 times, exchanged a look with George. So it's the Callahans. We've been saying for months they've been pushing. This is an act of war. We don't know that yet, Roderick said. What's to know? George leaned forward. They poison our water, kill our livestock, weaken our position. Then they take the northern range. Your father would have had enforcers on their doorstep by noon. There it was. Your father. The words landed on Roderick's oldest bruise. His father, Hank Greymane, had been a legend. Hard, decisive, built like a wall and about as warm. He'd run the pack for 30 years through sheer force of will. Roderick had grown up in that shadow, always too thoughtful, too careful, too willing to ask questions before swinging. His wolf, notably, did not engage with the emotional dimension of this. His wolf had opinions about Hank Greymane that were filed under classified. The elder made a statement about the former alpha. This is a manipulation tactic. Former alpha was effective, but operated with insufficient intelligence-gathering protocols. We do not take tactical advice from men who think with their fists. Continue current strategy. I'm not sending enforcers anywhere based on a guess, Roderick said, his voice flat. Kit, can you find the source? Every head turned. Kit straightened, Barnaby still on her hip. the wooden spoon now embedded in her hair where the cub had deposited it. "Yes," she said. "The contamination gradient will point upstream. I just need to follow it." Nora looked at Roderick as if he'd suggested they let the bear cub handle border negotiations. "You're sending a vet tech to investigate a territorial incursion?" "I'm sending the only person in this room who knew it was poison before anyone else knew something was wrong," Roderick said. He looked at Kit. The absolute certainty in her eyes was a thing he could lean his entire weight against. "Marcus goes with you. Take whoever you need." Kit's chin lifted. "I'll need the truck, and my kit, and not the goose," Roderick said. "Gerald has very good instincts." "Gerald bit a UPS driver last week." "The UPS driver was standing too close to the garden. Gerald was right." Shepard weighed in. "The goose is right about people. Better nose for trouble than half this pack. Also, the goose has never once questioned our authority. The goose is loyal." The enforcers could learn something. Roderick sighed. "Fine, the goose can go." Gerald, who was standing in the kitchen doorway like a small feathered bouncer, honked once. It sounded like approval. The investigation took Kit 2 days. She drove the old pack truck north with Marcus in the passenger seat and Gerald riding shotgun between them, sitting on a folded blanket with his head held high, radiating judgment. The back of the truck held her field kit, sample jars, pH strips, and, because she was Kit, Patches the fox in a carrier, Professor Hoot in a travel crate, and Barnaby in a hay-lined dog kennel that he was already too big for. Marcus had been Roderick's beta for 6 years. He was calm, competent, and had the particular patience of a man who had learned that the Greymane Pack's definition of normal was a moving target. But even he had limits. "The owl is staring at me," he said 15 minutes into the drive. "He does that," Kit said serenely. "He's assessing you. He'll stop when he decides you're acceptable. And if he decides I'm not, he'll keep staring." Professor Hoot swiveled his one good eye toward Marcus and did not blink for the remaining 40 minutes of the drive. Shepard, meanwhile, was performing a rolling inventory of every creature in the vehicle. Patches, secure. Slightly sulky because the fox carrier is next to the bear kennel, and Patches does not approve of bears. Professor Hoot, watching the beta. Good. The beta is trustworthy, but the owl should verify independently. Gerald, alert. Gerald is always alert. Gerald is the most reliable member of this expedition, and I will not be taking questions. Barnaby, sleeping. His breathing is good. He dreamed about milk earlier. I could tell. And the Alpha is not here. We are far from the Alpha. This is fine. We don't need to be near him at all times. We are independent. We are fine. How far away is he? Can we still smell him? We cannot still smell him. This is less fine. Kit followed the creek upstream, stopping every half-mile to test the water. Each sample was worse than the last. The pH was dropping, the chemical signature getting stronger. She crouched at the water's edge while Marcus stood watch, her hands steady, her focus absolute. This was her element. Not pack politics, not territorial posturing, but the quiet, specific work of listening to what the land was trying to say. At the second stop, a stray cat emerged from the underbrush and wound around Kit's ankles. She picked it up automatically, scratching behind its ears. Shepard went perfectly still. She picked up the cat. She is petting the cat. The cat is purring. The cat has known her for 12 seconds and is already getting the full treatment. We have been here for months. Do we get picked up? Do we get scratched behind the ears? No. We get internal monologue. The cat gets hands. Kit, entirely oblivious to her wolf's existential crisis, set the cat down gently. You shouldn't drink from this creek, buddy. The water's bad. The cat meowed. Shepard, despite herself. The cat says there are dead fish downstream. The cat is actually useful. Fine, the cat is fine. It is small and has no loyalty. We are better. By the second day, Kit had traced the contamination to its source. The creek wound through a narrow valley that straddled the Greymane-Callahan border, and just past the tree line on the Callahan side, Tucked into a hollow that was almost invisible from the main trail, she found it. Barrels. Dozens of them. Industrial drums, some rusted, some new, stacked carelessly in a depression where the ground sloped toward the water. The soil around them was stained dark, and a slow, steady seepage trickled from the lowest barrels directly into the tributary that fed the main creek. The chemical smell here was overwhelming. Acrid, metallic. Wrong. Kit pulled on gloves and examined the nearest barrel. A shipping label, partially dissolved by rain, was still readable. Callahan Industrial Supply. A second barrel had a hazmat diamond sticker, half peeled. A third had a manifest number she photographed with her phone. "They're dumping," she said to Marcus, her voice tight. "Industrial waste. Chemicals from some operation on their side. They're not even trying to hide it. They just found a spot they thought no one would check." Marcus crouched beside her, his face hard. This isn't an act of war. This is just negligence? Worse, this is cheap. They didn't want to pay for proper disposal, so they found a valley on the edge of their territory and let it leak into our watershed. They probably didn't even think about the farms downstream. Or they didn't care. She was photographing everything when a twig snapped behind them. A man, human form, but the scent was unmistakably Callahan, stepped out of the trees. He was young, mid-20s, with the nervous energy of someone caught doing something he knew was wrong. He was carrying a shovel. He'd been coming to bury more barrels. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice cracking. "This is Callahan land." "The creek isn't," Kit said, not looking up from her phone. "And neither is the poison it's been carrying into our farms for the last month." The man's eyes darted to Marcus, who was considerably larger than him and currently radiating the calm menace of a man who could end this conversation in several different ways. Look, I just work for them, all right? I just move the barrels. I don't—" A silent, feathered shape dropped from the branch above. Professor Hoot, who had been scouting ahead like the world's most dedicated surveillance drone, raked his talons across the man's shoulder. The man yelped and stumbled backward. Simultaneously, Gerald, who had been waddling along behind Kit with the quiet determination of a Secret Service agent, spread his wings wide, extended his neck, and charged. Gerald did not go for the face. Gerald went low. He clamped down on the man's bootlace, planted his feet, and began pulling with the single-minded fury of a creature who had found his purpose in life. The man, already off balance from the owl, tripped over his own feet and went down hard. Marcus stepped forward and put one boot on the shovel. "Stay down. Kit, you got what you need?" Kit was already pulling the parchment. No, her phone. She was already pulling up her phone, fingers flying. She texted Roderick 3 words. Poison. Callahan. Proof. She attached 6 photos and hit send. Back at the compound, Roderick was losing his mind. Not visibly. Visibly, he was sitting in his office, reviewing the quarterly property tax filings with the same granite expression he wore for everything. Inside, his wolf was running a continuous, desperate loop that no amount of discipline could quiet. Kit has been gone for 37 hours. She is outside our perimeter. She is with the beta, which is acceptable, and the goose, which is a variable, but she is not here. We cannot verify her safety through direct scent confirmation. This is unacceptable. Recommend immediate retrieval operation. She's with Marcus, Roderick muttered to himself. She's fine. She nipped our ear 3 days ago. I still have not recovered. If something happens to her before I recover, the timeline will be unresolvable. Nora appeared in his doorway, because Nora always appeared in doorways when he least wanted her to. Have you heard from the girl? Kit, Roderick corrected. And no, not yet. Your father would have sent enforcers, not a vet tech with a goose. You've mentioned that. I mention it because it bears repeating. Nora sat down without being invited, which was her signature move. The pack is worried, Roderick. They see their alpha sending his mate to do his fighting for him. It doesn't look strong. The words landed on the old wound. Not strong enough. Not hard enough. Not his father. Roderick's jaw tightened. His wolf, however, had a different take. The elder female is attempting psychological manipulation through reference to the former alpha. Counter strategy: ignore. The former alpha once got lost using a paper map in 2004. His tactical legacy is overstated. Our mate has a better nose than anyone in this pack, including us. She is the correct asset for this mission. Decision stands. Roderick looked at Nora. Kit is the only person who identified the contamination before anyone else knew what was happening. I trust her judgment. Trust, Nora said, as if the word tasted sour. Trust doesn't hold a territory. Neither does posturing. Nora left with the particular silence of a woman who intended to be right later. Roderick sat in the quiet she'd left behind, and the quiet was worse than the conversation. Because the worst part about Nora wasn't that she was wrong, it was that she was half right. Not about Kit, about the doubt. The doubt was already there, had always been there, planted by a father who had looked at his quiet, thoughtful son and seen something insufficient. His wolf, usually a fortress of tactical detachment, broke protocol. The elder female has left. Good. Her scent was antagonistic. But she hit the nerve. The one about the former alpha. I felt it land. We need to move. We need to run. Sitting in this room is making us worse. Recommend immediate physical reset. Solo. Fast. Now. Roderick didn't argue. He locked his office, walked out the back door, and shifted the moment he hit the tree line. The change was a relief. The doubt, the second-guessing, the suffocating weight of his father's ghost. All of it simplified into the clean binary of muscle and ground and speed. He ran the southern loop, hard, alone, for 20 minutes. Just a wolf in the woods, not an alpha, not anyone's son, not the man who might be making the worst call of his life. His wolf ran beside him, or rather, was him, in focused, wordless motion. No briefings, no scoreboard. Just the ground and the dark and the hard, clean work of burning off the poison that Nora had stirred up. He came back winded, calmer, and shifted on the back porch. Stood there barefoot in the dark for a minute, breathing. Then, delayed by exactly 12 minutes, his wolf resurfaced with unfinished business. She nipped our ear 3 days ago. I still have not recovered. If something happens to her before I recover, the timeline will be unresolvable. Also, she scrunched her nose when she shifted back at the pack run. I have been holding that information for days. I am a predator. I am feared. She scrunched her nose, and I have no bones. I would like this on the record. His phone buzzed. Poison, Callahan, proof, 6 photos. Roderick stared at the screen. The photos were damning. Industrial drums on Callahan land leaking into Greymane watershed. Shipping labels, hazmat stickers, a manifest number. His wolf went cold and focused. Threat identified. Source confirmed. The Callahans have contaminated our territory through negligent chemical disposal. This is not an act of war. This is cowardice and laziness. Recommend controlled confrontation. We present evidence. They comply or face consequences. No blood unless forced. This is a cleanup operation, not a war. Roderick texted back, "Come home. We handle this together." Kit drove back to the compound with the evidence. A very smug Gerald, a rattled Callahan worker Marcus had zip-tied to a fence post for his own alpha to collect, and, because she was Kit, a 3-legged dog she'd found limping along the road 2 miles from the farm. The dog's name was Hopper. She'd decided this in under 30 seconds. Shepard had opinions. Another one. She found another one. That's fine. The dog can join the menagerie. The dog can have a bed and a name and hands. And we will be here, in her head, where we have always been, doing all the real work. And the dog will get the belly rubs. This is fine. We are not jealous. We are a wolf. Wolves do not experience jealousy. That is a human emotion, and it is beneath us. The dog licked Kit's hand. That dog doesn't even know her like we do. We have been here longer. Kit arrived home to a compound buzzing with tension. Marcus had called ahead. Everyone knew about the Callahan barrels. The elders were gathered in the main house, voices raised. She could hear Tom's bass rumble through the walls. An act of aggression that demands a response. She found Roderick in the kitchen, leaning against the counter, arms crossed, a cup of cold coffee beside him. He looked tired. Not the surface tired of a long day, but the deep tired of a man carrying a weight he couldn't set down. The alpha tired that lived in his bones. Shepard noticed immediately. He has the frown lines again, the bad ones. He needs to sleep. He needs food. He needs us. Does he know he needs us? He probably doesn't know. He's not good at knowing things about himself. That's what we're for. Roderick? Kit said softly from the doorway. Hopper, the three-legged dog, was tucked under her arm. He looked up, and his face did the thing it always did when he saw her. The granite softened for exactly 1 second before the alpha mask came back. Kit, you're back. He pushed off the counter, hands hovering near her shoulders, as if he wanted to touch her but had forgotten the protocol. That was good work. The photos are solid. I've already called the Callahan Alpha. We're meeting tomorrow. Good, she said. I can walk you through the contamination path, the drainage routes. I've got it handled. He was already moving past her toward the living room, where the elders' voices were rising. There's a lot to coordinate. The farms need clean water trucked in tonight. I have to brief the enforcers for tomorrow's meeting. Nora wants... You need to eat, Kit said, setting Hopper down. The dog immediately began investigating the kitchen, with the optimistic enthusiasm of someone who has just discovered that floors sometimes have food on them. Sit down, I'll make you something. He paused in the doorway. Kit, There's a lot happening right now. I'll grab something later. She made him a sandwich anyway. Roast beef with sharp mustard, the way she knew he liked it. She carried it to his office 20 minutes later, where he was hunched over a map of the northern border with Marcus, planning the approach route for tomorrow's confrontation. She set the plate on the edge of the desk. Eat. He didn't look up. He was mid-sentence with Marcus, tracing the access road on the map. If we come from the east side, they can't claim we crossed the... Roderick, eat. He glanced at the plate, then at her. And something about the interruption, the third one in 20 minutes, on top of the elders, on top of Nora, on top of 2 days of worry that had ground his patience to a nub, cracked the filter he usually kept between his brain and his mouth. Kit, I don't need a sandwich. I need you to stop hovering and let me handle this. You did your part. I'm doing mine. Go check on the animals or something. Go check on the animals. The words hung in the kitchen. Marcus went very still. He didn't look at Kit. He didn't look at Roderick. He looked at the map with the intense focus of a man trying to become two-dimensional. Kit stood there for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for the words to land in full. Go check on the animals. Not, thank you. Not, I need a minute. Go do the thing that everyone thinks is all you're good for because this, the real work, isn't yours. He hadn't meant it that way. She knew, somewhere beneath the hurt, that he hadn't meant it that way. But knowing and feeling are different countries. And right now, she was standing in the wrong one. Shepard, who had been quietly cataloging the sandwich ingredients with proprietary pride, went silent. Not frantic silent, not panicking, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes after something breaks cleanly. Then, very small. He told us to go check on the animals. That's what he thinks we are. The animal girl. The one who is useful for the soft things and in the way for everything else. We drove 2 days. We found the poison. We got the proof. And he said go check on the animals. Okay. We know where we're not wanted. Barnaby won't say that to us. Barnaby thinks we're the whole world. Let's go be with someone who thinks we're the whole world. Sure, Kit said. Her voice was perfectly level, eerily level, the kind of level that should have set off every alarm Roderick had. But he was already looking at the map again. She walked out, not to their bedroom, to the barn. She sat down in the hay next to Barnaby's kennel, And the bear cub woke up and pressed his warm nose against her palm, and she sat there in the half-dark with her hand on a bear and her back against the wall and did not cry. She just got very, very quiet. Hopper limped in a minute later and lay down against her thigh. Patches appeared from somewhere and curled in her lap. Professor Hoot landed on the rafter above her and settled in, his single eye watching the barn door like a sentinel. Shepard kept a running whisper. "See? They came. They always come. We don't need to be in the room with the map. We are fine here. The hay smells good. Barnaby's breathing is steady. The fox is warm. We are fine. We are completely fine. We are not thinking about what he said. We are especially not thinking about the way he didn't look up when he said it." Roderick reached for the sandwich 7 minutes later. He took a bite. It was perfect. Roast beef, sharp mustard, the bread she always got from the bakery on 5th because she'd noticed once, months ago, that he'd said it was good. She'd remembered. She always remembered. "Go check on the animals." The words replayed in his head, and this time he heard them. Not as a stressed man triaging his evening, but as Kit would have heard them. After 2 days in the field, after finding the proof that saved 4 farms, after making him a sandwich with the right mustard because she pays attention to everything about him, always, even when he pays attention to nothing about her. Go check on the animals. He put the sandwich down. Marcus, still studying the map, said without looking up, "She made that with the mustard from the place on 5th. She drives 20 minutes out of her way to get it." "I know," Roderick said. "Do you?" The question sat there like a grenade. Marcus didn't say anything else. He didn't need to. Roderick stood up. His wolf, who had been professionally focused on the Callahan strategy, delivered a single assessment. "We told our mate to go check on the animals. We reduced her to the thing Nora calls her. We became the thing we swore we wouldn't become. The former alpha would be proud. That is not a compliment. Go fix this. Now. Right now. Leave the map. The map is paper. She is everything." He walked to the barn. No shift, no dramatic sprint through the forest. Just a man walking across a yard in the dark, knowing he'd done something he couldn't undo, only fix. He found her in the hay. Barnaby was asleep against her side. Patches was in her lap. Hopper was pressed against her leg. Professor Hoot watched him from the rafter with an expression that, in a human, would have been cold contempt. She wasn't crying. That was worse. She was just sitting there, still, like someone waiting for a bus that was never coming. "Kit?" She didn't look up. "I'm checking on the animals, like you said." It landed exactly the way it should have. He felt it in his chest. That was... He stopped. Started over. No preamble, no excuses. "I said something unforgivable, and I need you to know that I heard it. Not when I said it. After. When I ate the sandwich you made me with the mustard you drive 20 minutes to buy, and realized that the person who pays more attention to me than anyone alive just got told to go be somewhere else." She still didn't look at him, but her hand on Barnaby's fur went still. "You drove 2 days through the territory," he said, his voice stripped raw. "You found the source. You got the proof. You came back covered in creek mud with a 3-legged dog and a goose who thinks he's in the Secret Service. And I told you to go check on the animals. Like that's all you are. Like that's not the thing you do that's better and braver than anything I've ever done in a strategy meeting." He crouched down, bringing himself to her level. "Nora says my father would have handled this differently. She's right. My father would have said exactly what I said tonight. He'd have told my mother to stay out of the way while the real wolves handled things. And she did. She stayed out of the way for 30 years, and by the end she was a ghost in her own home." His jaw tightened. "I swore I'd never be that. And tonight, I was exactly that." Kit finally looked at him. Her eyes were dry, but the hurt in them was specific and deep, and entirely his fault. "You didn't even look at the sandwich," she said, and her voice cracked, and it was almost funny, how the smallest thing was always the biggest thing. "I ate it," he said. After you left. It was perfect. It's always perfect. You always know exactly what I need, and I'm the idiot who told you to go check on the animals while I stared at a map. A long pause. Barnaby snored softly. Patches yawned in Kit's lap. Shepard is composing a very angry poem about you right now, Kit said. It doesn't rhyme, but it's got a lot of feeling. I deserve that. It has 4 stanzas about how the fox appreciates us more than you do. The fox is right. She almost smiled. It was small and reluctant, and it cost her, and it broke something open between them. Come here, she said. He sat down in the hay next to her, not gracefully. He was too big for the space between the bear and the fox and the 3-legged dog, and he ended up with hay in his hair and Hopper's chin on his knee and Barnaby's paw on his boot. Kit leaned into him, her head against his shoulder, and he wrapped his arm around her and held on. His wolf filed a report, very quietly. Mate is beside us. She allowed proximity despite our catastrophic failure. She smells like hay and mustard, and the particular warmth of someone who has decided to forgive us even though we don't deserve it. All strategic priorities are irrelevant. The map is in the office. We are in a barn. The barn is correct. The map was never correct. She's leaning into us. Her breathing is slowing down. I think she's going to fall asleep. If she falls asleep on us in this barn, I will not move for the rest of my life. I am a predator. I am feared. I am sitting in hay with a bear on my foot, and I have never been more at peace. I would like this classified as top secret because it is embarrassing. Kit's wolf, warm against Roderick's side, murmured, He came to the barn. He didn't send a text. He came himself, and he sat in the hay, and he said it back to us. The exact words, the exact thing, so we'd know he heard it. He's got hay in his hair. The bear is on his foot. He's not moving. Okay, the angry poem is on hold. We're keeping him. But the fox did appreciate us first. That's in the record. The next morning, Roderick drove to the Callahan compound with Kit in the passenger seat, Marcus in the back, and a folder full of evidence on the dashboard. Gerald rode on the dashboard itself because no one had successfully argued that he shouldn't. The Callahan Alpha, a man named Dale Callahan, met them in his driveway. He was big, bluff, and had the particular energy of someone who had been hoping this conversation wouldn't happen. Roderick didn't posture. He didn't threaten. He opened the folder, laid out the photos, the water samples, the shipping manifests, and the vet reports from 4 farms with dead livestock. Your operation is dumping industrial waste into the watershed that feeds my territory, he said, his voice even. 3 farms have lost cattle. The creek ecosystem is dead for 2 miles. I have a manifest number, a Callahan shipping label, and one of your people who was caught trying to bury more barrels on the border. Dale's face went through several colors. Now listen, Greymane, our processing facility generates some byproduct, sure, but we've been handling it. You've been handling it by dumping it in a ditch and hoping it ran downhill into someone else's problem. It ran into mine. Kit, standing beside Roderick, added quietly, The contamination has reached the water table. If it's not remediated, it'll affect your wells, too. Within the year. Dale looked at her, then at the photos, then at Roderick. His wolf was doing the math that his bluster was trying to avoid. This was not a fight he could win. The evidence was airtight, and the Greymane Alpha was not here to negotiate. He was here to inform. You have 30 days to remove every barrel, Roderick said. You pay for the farm losses. You fund the creek remediation. And you stay on your side of the border for the next 12 months while the ecosystem recovers. This is not a discussion. Dale opened his mouth. Gerald, still on the dashboard of the truck behind them, honked once. It was a honk that carried across the entire driveway. It was a honk that said, the negotiations are over. Dale closed his mouth. 30 days, he said. 30 days, Roderick confirmed. They drove home in silence for about 4 minutes. Then Marcus from the back seat said, Did the Goose just close a territorial negotiation? Gerald is a strategic asset, Kit said, with the absolute sincerity of a woman who had never been more serious about anything in her life. Roderick's wolf updated his files. The goose has been reclassified. Former status, agent of chaos. New status, diplomatic enforcer. Security clearance, upgraded. I still do not trust him, but I respect the results. A week later, Roderick stood on the back porch of the compound, watching Kit in the yard below. The old equipment barn had been cleared out and transformed. What had been a storage space for ancient lawnmowers and broken furniture was now a clean, bright, organized space with kennels, a treatment area, a warming station for orphaned animals, and a hand-painted sign over the door that read, Greymane Wildlife Rescue, all creatures welcome. Kit had done most of it herself, with help from Marcus's mate Lena, who was a nurse and understood wound care, two of the younger pack members who'd volunteered because Kit had that effect on people, and Gerald, who had supervised the painting by standing in the middle of the floor and honking at anyone whose brushwork displeased him. The compound had absorbed the sanctuary the way it absorbed everything Kit touched, slowly, skeptically, and then completely. The enforcers who had once given the menagerie a wide berth now stopped by to check on Barnaby's growth. Old Jim Fendrell, who had been the most vocal about the animal situation, had been spotted sitting in the barn at 6 a.m., bottle-feeding an orphaned fawn and pretending he'd only come in to check the plumbing. Even Nora, steel-spined, disapproving Nora, had been caught reading aloud to Professor Hoot from a veterinary textbook, and when confronted had simply said, "The owl is more attentive than most of this pack." Roderick watched Kit kneeling in the yard, wrapping a bandage around the wing of a small hawk. She was talking softly to it, her hands impossibly gentle. Hopper was sprawled beside her. Patches was draped across her lap like an orange scarf, clearly having beaten all other animals to the prime real estate. Barnaby, who was no longer small but was still convinced he was a lap bear, was sitting 3 feet away, watching the hawk with the intense curiosity of a creature who had not yet learned that not everything was a friend. His wolf took it all in. Status report. Luna is secure. Territory, stable. The Callahan situation is resolved. The creek remediation is on schedule. The goose has not bitten anyone of consequence in 4 days, which is a personal record. The menagerie continues to expand. Current census? 2 foxes, 1 owl, 1 bear, juvenile, growing rapidly. This remains a concern. 1 badger, anxious. 1 deer, confused. 1 dog, 3-legged, enthusiastic. 1 hawk, under treatment. 1 goose, unpredictable, respected. The squirrel has relocated to the barn rafters and is building something. I am monitoring. Roderick walked down the porch steps, across the yard, stepping carefully over Hopper, who thumped his tail without opening his eyes. He crouched behind Kit and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. She leaned back into him without looking up, her focus still on the hawk's wing. I love you, he said. Not quietly, not as a confession, just a fact, stated in the middle of a Tuesday afternoon at normal volume. Kit smiled. I know. Shepard has been composing a ballad about your jawline. It's 12 verses now. There's a bridge about your forearms. A bridge? She's very thorough. Shepard, delighted to be referenced. He should know that we have been working on this for weeks. It is our best work. Verse 7 rhymes devastating with frustrating, and we're very proud of it. Also, the hawk is doing better. Her wing will heal. And the alpha is warm. He is very warm. We are not moving. Cancel everything. Roderick's wolf filed his final report of the day. She said our name again. I am not going to be functional for the rest of the afternoon. This is acceptable. All other priorities have been recalibrated. She is the priority. She has always been the priority. The map was never the priority. The map was paper. She is a pause. Unprecedented in the wolf's operational history. She is the best thing that ever happened to us. This is not tactical analysis. This is just true, and the goose is an acceptable colleague. This is also, reluctantly, true. Kit turned in his arms, the hawk safely settled in its nest of towels, and looked up at him. Her eyes were clear and warm and completely certain. She knew exactly who she was. Here, in this place, with this man and this pack, and this ridiculous, growing, impossible collection of creatures who needed someone to listen. "So are you going to kiss me?" she said. "Or should I go check on the animals?" He laughed, a real laugh, deep and startled, and kissed her. Gerald honked from across the yard. Whether in approval or protest was, as always, unclear. But for once, in the middle of their beautiful, chaotic, slightly unhinged life, nobody cared. The alpha and his mate. Surrounded by the broken and the saved. Finally, perfectly home.